Welcome, everybody. This is our second ever and first virtual fun event for Twin Cities. I'm Jack Stark. I'm the community manager for tech.mn and for fun. And I have just a few housekeeping things before we get going. So first, this event is rated R. There will be some swearing. It'll all be respectful and in good fun. But it won't be necessarily kid-friendly unless your kid is into that kind of stuff. So we recommend headphones or finding a space away from the kids for the next hour or so. And then also please stay on mute while our speakers are speaking. So this is our first virtual event, so bear with us. One tradition that we started at our last fun event, which was in March before everything started going crazy in the world, was giving our speakers a lot of recognition, especially when they come up to talk. So these brave souls are getting up to tell their fuck ups to complete strangers. And so one thing that we do and encourage you to do is that once our fabulous MC, Sarah, introduces the speaker, go ahead, go off mute and give them the biggest round of applause ever. So give them all you got. So before I hand it off to our MC, I just want to tell you a little bit about tech.mn. Tech.mn is a hub for the business and technology communities in Minnesota. And we curate digital experiences like Fuckup Nights. Usually it's in person, but we're embracing the whole virtual thing, and some other content series as well. And we keep the Minnesota innovation ecosystem informed, engaged, connected, and motivated to become the best that they can be. And so you can find out more about our experiences on our website, tech.mn. We have an awesome membership that we'll talk a little bit more about later. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our MC, the amazing Sarah McNally. So Sarah is the CEO of the People Brand Company. The People Brand Company identifies and closes corporate alignment gaps by creating awareness in leaders, teams, and individuals as to why everyone's contribution and commitment matters. In 2020, Sarah also started Lady Boss Virtual, which is a community of professional women who meet twice a month for a virtual breakfast to network, connect, and ask what we need to do to keep moving forward and for our goals and our purpose. So if you haven't heard Sarah's story, she was just on the tech.mn podcast, and we'll be sending out all the links and information about speakers after the event. So without further ado, here is Sarah McNally.
Thank you, Jack. Well, hello, everybody. Super excited to be hosting the second Fuckup Night Twin Cities. This is so awesome. This event series is so awesome. We're so happy that we get to do it. We weren't sure, like Jack said, the first one was in March and then the shit hit the fan. And so we're really happy that we can play in the virtual space, which actually affords a lot of different opportunities for us. So this is an event series, as you have already heard and know, where we get to use the F word. Not only do we get to use the F word, it's kind of a requirement to use the F word. So that's pretty fun too. So I'm really happy to be here, and I wanted to share a little bit about why this event series is so important to me. And it's my personal story of how I even came across Fuckup Nights. Last year, 2019, in July, I was hitting my wall professionally, probably one of the lowest times for me professionally. I had taken over a family business in 2018, and that was really when the shit hit the fan. And so I was in a recovery mode, but I was just lost. And I was doubting my vision. I didn't believe in it anymore. I was doubting the decisions I was making. And I thought, if I see another hashtag living my best life, hashtag gratitude, I'm gonna puke all over my computer. I just couldn't handle that. And I'm in the inspiration business, but it just was not what I needed in that moment. So I went actively seeking other people who were suffering and in doubt like me in business. Because let's face it, we live through social media in this like airbrushed, photoshopped version of success, and it's a bunch of crap, and there needs to be another story. So I went actively seeking, like, where is the other part of this story? And I came across a podcast that I have on my phone, TED Talk Radio Hour, and one of the episodes was failure as an option. So I started listening to this episode, and the first speaker was a Mexican entrepreneur by the name of Leticia Gasca. And she was talking about building a couple of businesses and failing, and also asking the question, like, where can I have this conversation? Where is this conversation happening about business? So she gathered a group of her entrepreneurial friends, and over shots of mezcal, created Fuckup Nights. So I thought, oh my God, I have found my people. So I went on the website, and I was just pouring all over it. And it's actually a much more international presence than it is domestically here in the States, but it's getting bigger. So I was looking for something in the Twin Cities, and there was nothing. Something near the Twin Cities, nothing. And so then I saw you could become an organizer. And I was like, okay, I'm going to become an organizer. I'm going to be the poster child for Fuckup Nights in the Twin Cities. So I emailed them. They said someone just applied to be the organizer. It was Kevin and Jack at tech.mn. We connected, and I said, I just want to be a part of this. I really believe in this reframe of failure, and I really believe in having this conversation. So we actually had an inaugural little meeting last October, and 11 of us got together at Barrio and Edina, 8 men, 3 women, and we spent 3 hours over dinner and drinks talking about our fuck ups. And there were tears, and that was the men. And there was laughter, and it was just so awesome and refreshing. And at the end, when we were saying goodbye, we were all hugging, and we were saying, oh my God, you fucked up so good. And I can't wait to see you fuck up again. And so it was just so fantastic. So that is what this afternoon is about, is to really reframe failure and help us elevate to what's possible in that conversation. So we have 3 amazing speakers this afternoon. I mean, these are like heavy hitters in the Twin Cities. Holy cow, I'm super excited to introduce them. Just a couple more things in terms of how we're gonna flow this. So each speaker has got about 7 minutes to speak. We're gonna do some Q&A for everyone. It's pretty short, it's about 5 minutes, but if you have questions for the speakers, please put it in the chat box. I will be monitoring that, and then I'll facilitate the Q&A. Jack said we'll go off, we'll go unmute and give the speakers a round of applause. If for some reason that is crazy, we can do sign language applause. So that's an option as well. So in order to do that, you would have to turn on your video. So I guess that might be a thing. If you don't want your video on, but we either do sign language applause, some people are doing the little hand gestures, or to go off mic, and we'll see what happens there. So I think that's all my notes for everything, and we're just gonna be good to go. And that's the great thing about Fuckup Nights. If we fuck up, that's what we're supposed to do. So let's begin. Our first speaker this afternoon, Thompson Aderinkomi. I've been practicing saying his name all day long. How did I do, Thompson?
Not bad.
Okay, good. So Thompson is the co-founder and CEO of Nice Healthcare, a technology-enabled primary care clinic that serves patients in their homes. He has a BS in economics, an MS in statistics, and an MBA from the University of Minnesota's Carlson School of Management. He's been married for 16 years. He has 2 sons, and he lives in Northeast Minneapolis. Welcome, Thompson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And
You're awesome.
Woo!
Glad to have you here, brother. Glad to have you here.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for that warm welcome. Thank you to Hannah, my wife, who's listening to me talk in the other room. So that's also a thing in the age of COVID. I'm not actually going to talk about Nice Healthcare today. not that much unless you ask. You can ask me questions about it if you desire. But I'm actually going to talk to you about, I don't know what I should call it, the upside down or the in-between. And it's really about a period of time in my life that in the scheme of things was not that long. So I'm going to set it up for you. I'm going to give you some context about where I was at this moment in my life, leading up to making the decision that I don't think was the right decision. It's debatable. I don't think it was. So the first thing, let me get my slide here, the next slide. So the first thing, the time frame here is 2016. So those are my two sons in 2016. That's the day after my second son was born. My oldest son is Enoch. My second son is Basil. And in September 2016, a new addition to our family rolled in on us. And it's been a great ride ever since. We can go to the next slide. Around the same time, September 2016, in October, November 2016, the company that I had spent the previous 4 years and all of my money and resources and family's money building, I got kicked out of that company by the venture capitalists that had invested in that company just for 3 months prior to me being kicked out. So baby born, losing sleep, readjusting. My oldest son started kindergarten, in that time period as well in September. So there's this confluence of things happening as a 2016 election for those of us that were there. I know it seems like a long time ago. So again, there's a lot of things happening in the world, but specifically for me, my life changing in ways that were not foreseen and that are very difficult to predict. We can go to the next slide. And last but certainly not least, even with all that, my wife started a business. So my wife started a business amidst all of that. It's Mill City Laser. It's located across from Brasa in Northeast Minneapolis. And her business is booming. It's going great. But back then, it was not. It was very stressful. It's a capital intensive business, 0 customers. For anyone who's launched a company before, you know how stressful it is. You know how scary it is. And if your life is not stable, it just makes it that much more scary. But we decided to go for it because we figured there's no better time to launch a business than now. So I think that sums up basically the summary of where I was in my life at this point. We can go to the next slide. So we're gonna camp out on this slide here, and I show you this slide because I'm a big believer in starting technology companies in a lean way, unless you're doing something that requires a lot of capital. And so I invoked a lot of low code and no code when launching my next company. So despite my second son being born, despite being kicked out of my company that I spent 4 years building, 4 months after raising $7 million, despite launching a new company with my wife that was just getting off the ground, my first son going to kindergarten, 2016 election, I myself also started a company. And that is not the mistake I'm talking about tonight. I don't think starting the company was a mistake, but maybe it was, who knows? If I started a company called Relate, I just came right off of getting kicked out of my company. I was like, okay, I'm going to do something big. I'm going to, show the world that, you can't kick me down. I can get back up, all that kind of stuff that we hear, all these one-liners. So I'm not going to get into what Relate did, but I started it from scratch. Like I wrote the initial, application myself, stringing together a bunch of different applications. And I got a lot of friends and family to get on the application, and daily active users started going up, signups started going up. I did a small promotion in this, at least to me, it was an obscure magazine out of Seattle that seemed to be a good fit. And I also did another promotion that Alex wrote from the Coven for me, and that appeared in another publication. And the combination of those two things, I went from like 50 signups to like 1,000 signups, like overnight. And then we started doing these reference groups. We started taking people out to lunch and dinner and asking questions about what they liked about the application, about the product, about the company, and things seemed to be going well. But I just wasn't satisfied because I hadn't figured out a way to charge people for it yet. Like I just hadn't figured it out. And I was talking one day to Greg at Dundee Ventures, and he was like, "Don't worry about it, Thompson. Don't worry about charging people. Like just get users, get them to like it, get them to come back, and you can figure out how to make money later on." And I listened to him, like I looked him in the eyes, and I was just like, I couldn't comprehend it because my background is healthcare, my background is finance, my background is B2B, where you charge people, to use your service. And I just couldn't grasp it. And despite having all these people using and loving the service, I kept on gyrating and trying to pivot and figure out different ways to spin the product in a way to get people to pay, maybe find a new segment, find a new market. And one day I was so frustrated and so angry, I sent out a mass message through the application because it was an SMS-based application. And I sent out a mass message and I said, Relate is no longer free. And if you value it, will you pay for it? And this is how much you should pay for it. And just overnight, I mean, not even overnight, like over a minute, right? Like people quit, like almost everybody like quit the program. People were sending in messages like, this is terrible. How can you do this? Blah, blah, blah. I love this service and I want to charge for it. And some people were like, yeah, I understand why you want to charge, but I just don't value enough to pay for it. Some few people paid, but not nearly enough. And, in hindsight, looking back, when I look at Relate and what Relate never became, I think the major mistake that I made was applying like my own experiences, my own learnings, my own expertise from an unrelated industry, from unrelated strategies, and trying to apply it in the consumer space. And I should have listened better to some of the people around me who were in that space. And kind of coincidentally, I just shut down the company last week. And it was interesting, and it was bittersweet, right? Like, but actually filing the closing documents, closing down the bank account, closing down the services, because there were still a few users on it even today in 2020. It just so happened that this last month was the month that I came to terms with it and said, I got to shut this thing down and focus on Nice Healthcare, which is my current company, which is doing very well. And so that's my story of a mistake. And who knows, maybe Relate would be a bigger and better successful company today if I hadn't kind of had that knee-jerk reaction and kicked people off the platform.
Wow, that's a really, I say like a cool story because I think it is like, it's so interesting. I have a couple of questions, but I want to open it up to the audience. It's probably easiest if you put it in the chat box, but if you want to unmute and you've got a question right now, we've got Dana who says, doesn't sound like you did anything wrong or you did the wrong thing. So I'm going to ask a question, Thompson, and then if you have a question, put it in the chat box. So with what you learned about yourself, about business with Relate, how has that informed what you're doing with Nice Healthcare? In what ways?
Yeah, one of the core principles of Nice Healthcare is we look at experience with skepticism when doing something new. Like if you're brewing a cup of coffee, you hire someone who's brewed a cup of coffee before, but if you're doing something that's never been done, or there are a lot of components that have never been done, that experience is not necessarily a good indicator of whether someone's going to know what to do, for this company, for this product, for this strategy. And so I'm very skeptical of myself when bringing my own experiences to things that have never been done or tested before. And then now instead we test before you do something.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Brian, Larry, go for it.
Hey, brother, nice to meet you, man. I'm super impressed, man. I got two questions. The first question is can you tell me that moment when you finally decided to shut something down that you had built, that you had loved, that you had wanted to see be all of this? Can you tell me what was that defining true moment? That's kind of something that I struggle with right now, is when do I say that I'm done doing that thing and focus on this thing because it's the right thing to be doing?
That's tough.
Yeah, I know, trust me.
It's like, because I have another company that's doing very well. Like you would think that I could just okay, forget Relate. Like I got this thing over here, but it's not, because Relate was a vision that I had in 2009. And I tried to start the company in 2010 and I couldn't get it off the ground. So I became attached, I think, when I finally got it going in 2016, because I was unsuccessful before. And I think the moment that I realized that I got it shut down, it was honestly, it was seeing the Twilio fees and Google Cloud hosting fees coming in, and no one was using the service. So, I was like, and so the checking account just kept going down, right? Because it was going to hit zero eventually. And I was like, okay, Thompson, like this is like physics right here. You can't deny it. Like this is going to get to zero. You got to shut it down. So, but look how long it took. This is a certificate of dissolution that I filed last week.
No, I love it. I think it's amazing, man. I'm struggling with that right now. I'm like you, and so because it's your idea, your thing, you don't want to give up, you don't want to shut it down, you don't want to quit. But at some point, financially, it's like, okay, man, you're hurting yourself at this point, right? So everything you're saying right now, I'm just like, okay, I'm loving this. Now, second question: how did you validate this new idea? What did you do to validate to make sure that this was a product that was going to succeed?
Oh, my current company?
No, your current company right now.
The current company had already been validated. So it had already been validated, and the current company is identical to the company the VCs kicked me out of. And the VCs didn't know how to run the company. So, it went up in flames in a few months. So I already knew it would work. But that company, that's a much longer story. So I'll stop.
No, I love it. I was the validation part. You're already filling this one, but you didn't want to fill again, so you made sure you did your homework. So I love it. So I was just trying to figure out how you did that, because that's like the big issue for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yep.
Thanks, Brian. We've got a question from Dana. What have you learned about driving service adoption in general, and how would you measure it?
Service adoption. So if you're talking B2C, I have no idea. I am clueless when it comes to B2C, consumer startups, consumer tech. I give mad props to all my consumer brethren out there. I don't know how you do it. I just don't know. I can work with enterprises. I can work with small businesses and sell to them. And really, for me, one entrepreneur said this to me in 2009. He said, forget everything you know about your company and just focus on distribution for B2B, He's like, just make sure distribution is as good or better than your actual product, and you will be successful. And I believe he's right. And that's what I've always focused on for the last 10 years in B2B, is a relentless pursuit of efficient distribution.
Awesome. I've got one last closing comment or question really, because I think it's amazing that you've got two entrepreneurs in your house. So are you currently talking to your 9-year-old, or what will you say to your sons about entrepreneurship?
Oh, we talk about it all the time. So, I mean, they see us working. We worked from home before COVID, so that wasn't like a new thing. We like, instead of math problems, we go through like P&L problems. Like, okay, if you sold 10 of this at this, and your costs are this, and you have to borrow this much from the bank, what's your profit? Including the interest. How about without the interest? Like, we do that kind of stuff with our 9-year-old, and it's the same. It's just arithmetic, but it's just a different context. And then he kind of gets to learn about business. He's sold, cupcakes and brownies and caramels, and we really encourage and push him to think about how do you create a place for other people to work and enjoy their life, create a product that's meaningful, versus how do I get a job? Like, we don't talk about getting a job in our household. That's not what we're built for.
Amazing. Thompson, thank you so much. That was a fantastic presentation. Woo-hoo-hoo!
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, any questions that weren't asked, we will save them and send them on, and hopefully you can connect with Thompson. So let me introduce our second speaker, Heather Manley. I don't know if any of you saw the cocktail for this evening, and if any of you are drinking the cocktail for this evening.
Applause to them.
I mean, you should probably go off camera, or turn your camera on so we can see your drink. But Mint Condition is the cocktail for this evening that was inspired by Heather Manley, because in 2013, Heather founded Crooked Water Spirits, an award-winning national spirits line that produces unique craft spirits, including bourbons, gins, vodkas, brandy, and ready-to-pour old-fashioned, oh my God, how do you pronounce this?
Negroni and Boulevardier.
Yeah, Boulevardier, that's it. Okay. These spirits of the North can be found in 7 states and over 500 liquor stores, restaurants, and airlines, gathering over 60 awards nationally. Heather purchased On Demand Group, a technology consulting company and family business, in 2008 with her brother, Sean Manley. They have since led the organization through significant growth and expanded ODG's business clientele to reach global markets by offering offshore solutions in Southeast Asia. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you. I prefer applause in case anyone's wondering. Like, thank you. All right, I'm out. FYI, speaking of fuck up, there are 14 people in some weird room wondering when this is starting. So if there's any, and I don't know how this works, but if there's anyone managing a room, I told her I can't help you. I am about to speak. There's a rando group of renegades trying to get into this chat room. So just FYI.
We're on it.
You're on it? Okay, perfect. I told him like email the admin. I can't do anything more. All right, we can head over to my first slide. I'm going to time myself so I don't go over. So my, and do you have my slides? I can go to the next one. There you go. So mine is about fuck up it's about knowing your seat and giving yourself grace. I run 3 organizations from startup, which is Crooked Water Spirits, to high growth established, which is On Demand Group. I am consistently traveling and have a thing of being overbooked because I love juggling everything, because one ball up, you throw it and you run to the next and something's going to hit, and to me that's a rush and it's very exciting. I love what I do, so working can truly be all consuming to me if I'm left to my own devices. And I'll say I've done this routine on and off for about, since I bought On Demand Group 2008, but kind of insanely manic and aggressive over the last 6 or 5 years, and even when my father passed away 3 years ago, didn't take a break outside of an emergency run to Ireland with my brother, where we literally were bawling in the middle of this beautiful restaurant. So going back to mental health and taking time on yourself, not creeping people out when you're out. I'd say a few years ago, I just really noticed that my satisfaction and my mental health was starting to shift. And you can go to the next slide. I started to notice that I just was feeling just totally empty, numb, no highs, no lows, which, you think that it's about sadness, and it wasn't about sadness. I wasn't sad, but I definitely wasn't feeling a lot. And I think it takes some time to understand that internally, if you haven't experienced that, and a lot of people don't externally don't see it. But I probably hung out in this space, I would say, for a good 6 months. Wondering, noticing it, but then just shoving it aside and driving forward and throwing myself into work. Next slide. And I love this. It's Lizzo in a milk bath, people. She's not drowning, but she's definitely got it up to here. And she looks delightfully beautiful from what everyone can see. But underneath, maybe a hot mess. So, you show what you want to show, and no one really, I'm not a fan of feelings. Everybody that knows me well knows that. I don't show them very well. And I just keep my head down. And this unhappiness started to percolate until one day my boyfriend came into the bedroom where I had been kind of literally hiding. I was working all day, but I was hiding in the bedroom just to check in with me. And I just had kind of my meltdown, which is not normal for him to see. His jaw dropped, his eyes got like super big. And I just shared with him what I was feeling like. I was feeling like a failure in all areas of my life. And oddly enough, at the same time, my EQ was really high. So I was quite aware that was an incorrect feeling, but regardless, I couldn't shake it. And it had me thinking that ODG was failing despite, our 35-40% growth. It had me feeling like Crooked Water was feeling despite national recognition, expansion, and growth. And what I had to do was step back, really take a breath. And one of my favorite sayings is talk yourself off the 2-foot ledge, because it's really not that fucking bad. And I had to just in that moment assess what was happening, right? I realized I was running multiple companies in multiple stages, and I was doing tasks that took a lot of mental bandwidth for me to complete. And it made me feel that little thing, like that little task out of all the things I was doing was affecting everything. It was making me feel like a failure. And the frustration had overtaken all my other successes and had shifted my mind into such a negative place because I could not do every aspect of my business to the level that I expected of myself. So it was really critical for me to step back at that moment and breathe and assess what was reality of the moment. No doubt it had taken weeks of percolating for this to get where it was without even my knowledge, and just kind of exploded in front of me. And I was definitely realized that I'm for sure a hustler. And I thought I could get by longer than I actually could on my own. And what I realized was that my hustler state of mind was actually an inhibitor to growth and tapping into my own key strengths. So next slide. What I did at that moment, that day, is I stepped back and I reviewed my goals. And I actually changed my goals and my thought patterns to align with realistic goals that I could live with, slow versus fast. What I things I needed to do so that I didn't constantly feel like I was not reaching these unattainable goals, which is really hard for me because I also know I'm a never satisfied person. I want to build big, beautiful, great things, and I want to do them at a fast clip. I began to review my schedule more critically, and in participating in opportunities that really supported the brand, not just supporting everything. And I think really resetting my mind to, I think, they'll say comparison is the thief of happiness. I think that's such a true statement. So we all have our own, what is good for us. Calm down, focus on my own goals, and go to the next slide. It was about butt in the right seat. I had to process what was the right seat for my butt in my company, and really aligning with the EOS methodology. The book Traction is fantastic. I have different seats in all of my companies, and really then next slide, delegating and outsourcing to my weaknesses. So I can't do it, nor am I good at all of it. That's for damn sure. My brother will tell you. And really looked at, within that week, I'd outsourced all of my financials for Crooked Water, which was the side hustle that turned into the real business. I started delegating to my full-time brand manager versus trying to own it all. And then next slide, I went on to work on physical and mental health. So there was also just something not right in the way of my thinking. And I ended up doing a biometric scan, which they just cut your hair, it's fine. But I realized, I am just running hot. It doesn't make sense. And she's like, yeah, after running all your stuff, you're running around like an 8-month pregnant woman. And I've never had kids, so super offensive to my body to do this to me. And end up doing a ton of holistic, really easy kind of cleansing on the body. And I don't know what it was, but taking the time to focus on the mental and the physical really teed me up to be able to move into that next step, and really channel positive energy and thinking. Also end up creating a gym in my house for the physical side. And then last slide. And I'd say, really feel the journey. I had to acknowledge and give grace for what I'm not good at, but then I also had to embrace and support what I was good at. Going forward, I'd say I'm better prepared to recognize this type of thinking and back out or redirect before I even get to the rabbit hole. But if I do get to the rabbit hole, I'm going to say something. And even, with my boyfriend or with a friend, say it until someone gives you a moment to actually talk about it and process it. I think it's just really critical, because even Rhett, who was also not big into feelings, didn't really give me a platform to talk about. I'm like, okay, this is uncomfortable. He's not the right guy to talk about this. I'm going to talk with somebody else. So don't just give up when you try once. And then I would say celebrate and embrace the journey, as that's where the value and our weight is created. I think we get so focused on that mountaintop or that goal. And what if you don't get there? Or what if you get there and it's different than what you expected? There's a lot of beautiful things along the way that makes you ready for that mountaintop, and to try to enjoy the journey versus panicking about it, and worry about controlling what you can.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. Again, put some questions in the chat box, but if nobody has one, I do. I have one. So I'm just going to go for it. So what would you say is the opposite of hustle?
Ooh. Complacency? I don't
Okay.
know. In my head, it's
In your head, yeah.
it's or maybe I don't know. Like hustle to me, it means just doing what you need to do to get it done. And maybe the better word for me is cheap hustler, because I always, all my businesses started when they were really small. You know, ODG was under $1 million when I bought it, and I couldn't even pay for marketing services. So I got Rhett ended up doing all the rebranding and all that. So it's that I think that's why I have that hustle, that deal of trying to get it done at a great quality, but not at full price. And so maybe it's not complacency, maybe it's I don't know, budget. It's the opposite of hustle.
Yeah. So Dana has a question. In the heat of the moment, what do you now use to calm anxiety and gain focus on what matters? And how did you learn that?
So I have a really high tolerance for stress. I really don't feel it. But when COVID hit, I actually did start to feel a little anxiety when I drank coffee, and I could actually feel like a little bit of the palpitations. So for that, I quit coffee. But then I also just at that point had my physical, and I just started working out. And working out, as much as I hate it and have to get up early to fit it in, it is truly a great positive channel for the energy that I have, and actually calms me, makes me a better person during the day. I'm more happy with myself. And then honestly, I'll have a glass of wine every single night, and that totally just shuts off my brain. 1 or 2 glasses, no shame in my game. I truly love wine. That's my next venture, is to start a wine label. But I think it's working. Just investing in yourself and your body. And I think CBD has worked for a lot of people. A lot of my friends have chatted about that as well. But I think it's just talking about it and trying things and seeing what works.
Yeah. One more. Was there a defining moment when you knew things had to change?
Bawling in front of my boyfriend for no apparent, like I don't show emotion, right or wrong. I'm working on that, to admit that I have feelings. But that was that was so out of context that you could not ignore how much it was waiting on me. You couldn't ignore it. It's just, and I didn't want it to happen again. So I had to step back, process, admit what was working and what was not, reassess my goals, maybe pump the brakes a little bit so that I can do attainable goals, and therefore smaller chunks, and have a better state of mind around it.
Yeah. One last one. As a hustler, a cheap hustler, I should say, what does contentment look like for you?
I have literally said, I hope I don't know. I don't know, because I am never satisfied. I guess legacy is what I shoot for. I want to build something that is beyond me. So, you know, I'm in Rotary and I want to build things with Rotary within the community. I want to know that I mattered and I feel that I did something good and I did something lasting beyond me. That once I know that's happened, then I think I will be content, more content. But I don't think I ever will super, like I'll never be, like my dad could be pretty content traveling once a year and giving heavily back to his community. But I think I don't know. I don't think I admire it, but I don't think I'll ever not be pushing for something.
Yeah. It's awesome, Heather. I mean, it's a great story. I mean, obviously you're a great role model for a lot of people. And like we've been seeing in the chat here, you get to read those comments. People really appreciate your vulnerability around this. So thank you so much.
Oh, I appreciate it. And I'm sweating. It's so uncomfortable. So I'm going to take off my sweatshirt and turn off my video.
Go have your mint condition. I mean, don't leave us, but you know, or your wine. So round of applause as we introduce our final speaker this afternoon, a rock and roll star here in the Twin Cities and I think nationally, Nancy Lyons. CEO, author, and speaker, Nancy Lyons has been at the forefront of the work culture conversation for more than 20 years. People first as a business strategy is the guiding principle that fuels the unique award-winning culture at Clockwork. Really cool building in Northeast, by the way. She speaks and writes about the crucial role work culture plays in delivering meaningful and effective results. Nancy has watched people go from being a victim of work to being the agent of work with simple shifts. Nancy's book, Work Like a Boss, is available pre-order. Thank you, Nancy, for being here. Woo!
Thank you. Do I just start? Do I just go?
Yes.
Go, right? Okay, let's do this. This is a super vulnerable story for me. I've never shared this story with anybody, especially with an audience like this. So I fuck up all the time, let it be known. Literally every single day I fuck something up. So it was really hard to narrow this down to 7 minutes and one glorious fuck up. I actually surveyed people that I know. I called them and I said, tell me about my biggest fuck ups. Tell me what I did to bother you. Tell me where I've screwed up in front of you. They had really good stories, but nothing beats this finger, this janky frickin' finger that you see in front of you. So that finger represents one of the biggest fuck ups of my entire life. But I didn't know it at the time. And what happened that night would go on to inform me throughout my life and my career. And sometimes I truly lived the lesson that I learned, and sometimes I forgot it and had to be reminded, but it's always there, this janky finger pointing to a rough night in the late 80s. Next slide, please. So in 1988, one of my closest friends was a woman named Kathy. I'm going to call her Kathy, which is sort of creepy because my sister's name is Kathy, but let's not dwell on that. We're going to talk about my good friend Kathy. Kathy was amazing. She was well-read and charismatic, and she was beautiful. She was articulate and funny. And when she talked to you, it was like you were the only person on the entire planet. Kathy and I were both theater nerds, and we both supported each other's acting dreams and our experiments, and she never judged my boyish ways or acted like I was out of place. And she included me in everything. When we weren't rehearsing or studying, we were drinking coffee and reading Camus or poetry, and sometimes we were reading it out loud to each other. Boy, I should have had a clue. Kathy was everything. Next slide, please. I'd always felt different. When I was small and all of my friends were playing with makeup, I was playing with Star Trek walkie-talkies and building tree forts and exploring in the woods by the cemetery near my house. I love cemeteries to this day. And when my friends were cutting out pictures from magazines and planning their faraway weddings, I was planning my political career, the one that would make me a senator or the first woman president or an astrophysicist. I lacked focus. Anyway, my friendship with Kathy was different too. It took up all of my headspace. It made me lose sleep. It made me question what was right and wrong and normal. What I felt for Kathy wasn't like what I felt for my other friends, certainly not what I felt for my best friend, Billy. He was Spock. I was Captain Kirk. Kathy was definitely not Spock. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. Next slide, please. So all of that wasn't something that I was ready for at the tender age of, we won't talk about it, in small town Michigan with conservative parents. I wanted it to go away, whatever it was. I hated how I felt, and I was afraid of what I was feeling, and I didn't like being different. I wished I could just be normal for once. I wished I could care about the crap that my other friends cared about, like fashion and nail polish and boys. I wished I could get Fritz to look at me. I wish I gave a shit if Fritz looked at me, but I didn't. I got surly and I got scared, and I didn't have language for what made me different or what scared me about my differences. I just knew I didn't like it. I didn't feel normal, and I wasn't happy, and I needed help sorting through it all. I needed help understanding what I was feeling. I needed someone to validate that I wasn't, in fact, broken, or maybe I was. Maybe I was looking for someone to validate that I was broken, that this was all crazy, and that maybe I was crazy. I felt crazy. I was a hormonal mess of emotions, and the fear of being not normal, of being different, just kept ratcheting up everything else that I was feeling. See, nobody talked about mental health then. Nobody talked about the expectations and the weight that we put on the shoulders of people that we have expectations of. Nobody talked about being different. No one talked, frankly, about anything. Next slide. But one night I decided to talk to my mom about things, about what I was feeling, and I was gonna ask for help. I wanted her to help me. I don't know what I wanted. I wanted, like, I wanted to see a shrink or go to a program or have somebody tell me that, yep, I was broken, but I could be fixed. There was a magic elixir someplace that I could take that would fix me and make me want to put eyeshadow on my lids, that would make me want to walk around in heels and fall and get back up and teach myself how to do it. So it was late one night, and my mother was getting ready for bed, and the house was dark, and my sister and father were in another room, and I met my mother in the kitchen. See, my whole family knew I was different. They had condemned my different. They wanted me to conform. They wanted me to be normal too. I was embarrassing. I wore boy clothes, and I cut my hair really short, and they wanted me to care about fashion and makeup and boys, and I was in despair about it. And in my despair, I asked my mother for help. Please make me normal. I want to feel like everybody else. I want my family to love me. I wanted Kathy to feel normal to me. I just wanted to be her best friend. I wanted to be in her wedding when she married some guy someday. I wanted us to cut out magazine pictures leading up to that moment. I wanted to not think about her all the time. I told my mom I was scared of what I felt for Kathy. I told her I was scared of what I felt for myself. I told her I needed help, and I whispered I thought I was gay. Oh, no, you're not, my mother said. And she promptly shoved all of my honesty and vulnerability and fear and difference right back where it came from. She wasn't interested. I was wrong. She started telling me how much of a pain in the ass I'd always been. My head really started spinning while my mom yelled, and I got up and I spun around, and in one blind, lost moment, I shoved my fist through the oven window. I lashed out and I punched that oven as hard as I could. Next slide, please. The aftermath was my head. My hand hurt like hell. My head was pounding. My doctor mom drove me to the hospital, and everybody was stunned. My sister, my dad, all of us. I looked down at my bleeding hand and saw the bones and the tendons of 3 of my fingers sticking out, and in shock, I leaned into the wall and I slid down into a sit. We wrapped my hand with a towel, and nobody said a word. I couldn't believe I had done that. Can you imagine doing that? But nobody said anything. My dad was disgusted with me. My mom was overwhelmed. My sister was confused, and I was just in shock. Next slide. See, I was different. And the thing I came to realize is that different is okay. We live in a world that is right now in the middle of a fight that in many ways is about accepting one another's differences. I tried to conform so hard. I tried to ignore who I was, to reject who I was. I tried so hard that I hurt myself. I hated that. I hated that reality more than I had hated the fact that I was different. Rejecting myself, realizing that I was rejecting myself was painful. I hurt myself and I had to have surgery to put those fingers back together. I had to go through rehab to learn how to use them again. And I had to go through a process to recognize that other people accepting me starts with me accepting me. I had to decide that how I felt and who I was not different. It was me. Next slide. It wasn't easy to embrace this lesson of accepting myself. I sometimes downplayed or completely evaded my gayness at work in my early career. I was afraid clients wouldn't understand or coworkers wouldn't understand. I spent the first half of my career trying to make other people comfortable or apologizing for myself. I hid who I was to protect everybody else, but I wasn't protecting myself in doing that. But when I became a parent, I made a promise that I would never apologize for who I was again. We would never apologize for our family. We were whole, and we are worthy, and we are awesome. And we would move through the world in exactly that way. I owed that to my son, and I owed it to myself. Next slide. So now I'm old, and I care less and less what others think of me and more about how I can make an impact. I'm proud of what we've created at my company, Clockwork, and a huge part of its success is born from the fact that we create a space where people can be themselves, whatever that means to them. It's not about me deciding how they show up and who they are and what their strengths are and what is meaningful to them. It's about the people who work there and those who used to work there. It's all of the alumni and all of the people that are there now showing up in the way that is entirely for and about them. And I hope I can use my shitty night and this crappy experience as a reminder that it's far harder to deny and reject anyone, especially yourself, than it is to accept and embrace them. Next slide. Not all business lessons come from failures in business. Some of the best ones come when we allow our personal and professional worlds to come together and influence each other. That injury didn't hold me back. It actually helps me get better. My fuck up, that downward spiral, was actually the beginning of me living my deeply held beliefs of mutual respect, seeing people for who they are, and embracing all parts of people equally. That janky finger is my badge of honor and a reminder of the night I fucked up by denying myself, but also a reminder of how that can never happen again to me or to anyone. Thanks.
Wow. Nancy, that was absolutely amazing. Again, questions in the chat box. I hope this is an appropriate question, but is Kathy still in your life?
Yeah. I mean, we know each other and we know where each other, where we live. Like, we're not close. That it was we were young. And she went, like so many of my exes, went on to marry a fella. Thank you. So if you want to get married, date me, ladies. I'm just kidding. If you're looking for a man, date me. I got you covered.
Oh my God.
That used to be my slogan. It's not anymore. My wife would not like
that. I mean, I can imagine that people are just processing the depth and intensity of what you just shared, the personal aspect of it, that they might not know what to ask you. And I know that I was thinking, and you did talk about it, that what that experience and the experience of being different, how that has informed your view on cultures and your empathy. I mean, I can imagine that has informed it greatly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think I wanted to make a workplace for me.
Yeah.
And others like me, because I never really fit in. So that is where it started. But then realizing that we could open our arms to everybody, that made sense and needed to be there, was really where we found our our mojo.
Yeah, that's awesome. Dana's got great questions. Thanks, Dana. What is a good way to get connected into the professional world as an LGBTQ person in the Twin Cities, particularly in technology?
You know, that's a great question. And I don't know that I have an answer. I think there's a lot of activist groups. I think for me, it wasn't so much about centering around technology, although there is a newly formed, and I think it came out of McKinsey, there was a mentoring group that started about 18 months ago that COVID put on hold, but I started working with. And then the other, they were basically pairing executives and established executives with up and coming LGBTQ professionals to have sort of relationships and work together to determine how to advance in their careers. And I got matched with a really amazing human being who works at Target, and then COVID put all of those meetings on hold. But I imagine that will happen again. But there's another human, Nick Elm. He runs a consulting firm called Massier, and he's also really involved in an LGBTQ work conference that he produces every year. So hit me up after this and I'll share that information with you.
Awesome. And Dana, I would say that based on that, that you could do that for your next question. And I'm so sorry, we're at 5 o'clock. And, but my last comment, Nancy, based on your amazing storytelling, I can only imagine what Work Like a Boss is like. So pre-order that book. Thank you so much for being a part of Fuckup Nights. Thank you to all three of our speakers. Can we get a round of applause? Silence or off mute? Nancy.
Yay!
Cool. I would, in regards to contact information for speakers, Dana, I would go to LinkedIn. That would be my first guess. And there's probably some information in their bios. From the tech.mn. So thank you again for the speakers. Thank you, tech.mn, our organizers. I mean, they're so amazing. If you are interested in being involved, we have another event in December. If you want to be a speaker, if you want to be a sponsor, if you want to be a volunteer, please connect with Jack. I'm going to put her email in the chat box. I know people are leaving, but an audience, thank you for being here. It's been a great afternoon. Jack, do you have anything?
Yeah, just a big thank you to all of our speakers, for everyone for coming. Like Sarah said, our next event is December 3rd. If you liked the event today, you want to become more involved, we have a number of ways to do that. One of the best is to become a member of tech.mn. You get early access and all of the updates to all of our fun events, as well as a number of other benefits here. And if you have questions, feel free to hit me up at the email in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening.